Sup? I decided I wanted to make a 5-step process for you guys on how to start making clothes. Because I feel like if you just narrow it down to like steps, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, things, you know, are a lot less daunting. And I know starting to sew your own clothes is like one of the most daunting things out there if you've never used a sewing machine or never even thought, even just had one little inkling thought in your brain about making clothes. Sorry, that was very inappropriate. A 5-step process will help. I think that's where I left off. So enjoy. Step number 1. We gotta figure out your goals first. I really believe that you should have a goal into deciding what you're gonna do with making clothes. Like for example, do you want to become a pro sewer? Like, are you wanting to make clothes? Do you want to make your whole wardrobe? Or are you just like looking to, you know, fix something, like tailor something, like shorten a pair of pants, shorten a skirt, or just fix a hole or fix a seam? Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be on the next Project Runway, or are you legit just trying to save like 10 bucks so you don't have to go to the tailor to get your pants hemmed? Because once you figure out what you want to do with how to make clothes, sewing clothes, then I feel like, you know, next steps, I can help you with that. Okay, you don't need to know the second exactly what you want to do with sewing and yada yada yada, but it is good to know in the back of your head kind of where you want to go with this. I feel like you do have an idea of what you want to do, like, yeah, I want to start making my own clothes, but I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it yet. That's okay, you don't need to know that right away, but you do, you know, have a little type of goal about ideally what you would like to do with everything goes smoothly. Step number 2. We need to get supplies. So now once we figured out what we kind of want to do with sewing, this will kind of, you know, lead you to how much you should probably just spend on these. I really stuttered. Spend on these supplies. For example, if you're just hemming a pair of pants every so often, I wouldn't recommend getting an expensive sewing machine. Try a thrift store sewing machine, try that out, or get a lower end model just because you're hemming a pair of pants, you don't need anything luxurious. But to be honest, for anyone starting out and you don't know if you're gonna enjoy it, I still don't recommend going out and buying a really nice sewing machine day one, just because what if you hate it? What if you do not enjoy this and then now you got a $5,000 sewing machine sitting in your house and no one wants to buy it on Facebook Marketplace? It could happen. So I always recommend, you know, after you take a class or you're starting to learn on the internet. Personally, I learned in grade 8 sewing and there were sewing machines there, so that's how I learned. I didn't learn on my own sewing machine. And then after that, I was able to use my mom's old, very old sewing machine. It jammed all the time. It was very frustrating, but I used that for years just because it worked. Why would I go buy a new one if I had a okay working one in my home for free? I didn't have money to buy a better one. So definitely use the supplies you have. You don't need to go out and buy $80 shears to cut fabric. Honestly, you could get away with kitchen scissors for a little bit until you get so frustrated you're like, okay, I'm gonna invest 20 bucks into nice scissors. You know, just take your time with investing in supplies. I don't think it's something that you should do all at once. I think slowly get frustrated enough and then buy a nice pair. Like, I do think, you know, invest into nicer things as you go, but see if you even like sewing first, you know, making clothes, because it's a little bit of a journey. It gets very frustrating. It's a hard learning curve. It's not the easiest thing in the world. I will have like a little guide down below of supplies you are gonna need when you're starting off, like bare minimum things to buy or, you know, search around in your house for or borrow, whichever, thrift, anything. I'm not gonna go very extensive because these are the supplies I use, you know, for many years without actually having to invest in, you know, the fancy tools. Step number 3. This is probably the most important part before you start making clothes, and it is practicing with the machine and just practicing your stitches. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you have little to no experience with the sewing machine, and this is very crucial to learn the sewing machine and learn the stitches before you go into making anything. Like, you want to practice on a lot of scrap fabrics before you even try making a garment. Hi, Jackie. Personally, when I first learned how to sew in grade 8, I had to make just seams. So I had to take 2 squares fabrics and sew them together and then have the seam there. You know, practice having right sides together and then flipping it over, steaming the seam, and then also doing the edges on the seam, like doing zigzag stitches, like doing the bare minimums of how to finish a seam and make sure my lines were straight. Make sure it looked good, because once you take it to a garment, it gets a little bit more tricky. So you really want to perfect your sewing skills of just sewing a straight line, sewing a straight zigzag, sewing a double seam, 2 seams beside each other, practicing back stitches, practicing different speeds, like going slow, practicing curves, like doing a curve on it. Like that's something you're gonna be doing in sewing a lot. Yeah, once you kind of practice those and you're like A+, 10 out of 10 on skill of it, you're pretty golden. Also practice with different fabrics. Like, I know you're probably gonna start off with the cotton fabric, which is the easiest one, and I definitely think you should. But you know, once you're comfortable with the cotton fabric and you're like, oh, this is so easy, maybe go to something a little bit more difficult, like a denim, something a little bit more thicker if your sewing machine can handle it. Or, gosh, knits are very tricky, so never start off with a knit if you're a beginner. Cotton is gonna be your best friend, like a woven cotton. Woven, knit, woven is non-stretch, knit, stretchy. So no stretch when you're starting off, okay? You'll get frustrated if you start with knits. They're kind of, yeah, you know. But if you don't know what you should do when you practice, definitely practice threading the machine. You really want to get good with that, you know, just to whip it out, just because that's usually where most of the issues come from when sewing, is because a machine is not thread correctly. So if you're having issues, that's always something you want to double check. Make sure the needle's sharp, because you always want to be changing the needle. And then read your manual. That's a good one. So step number 4, we are finally on the step where you can actually sew something. And to be honest, I recommend sewing something very simple, like a basic t-shirt. Or in my case, the first thing I ever sewed was a pair of boxer shorts. I don't have the boxer shorts. Like, I really wish I kept them. I actually wore them a lot, so they probably, you know, not looking too hot wherever they are. I wish I like kept them, didn't wear them, and then just had that as like a memento of the first thing I ever sewed, just because you can look back, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now after like sewing your first thing, and realize how bad it was. Because to be honest, your first thing you're gonna sew, at least 99% of you, it's gonna be trash. It's gonna be trash, okay? I'm not even gonna lie. It's gonna be terrible. You're gonna think in the moment it's great, and that's good. You're gonna think it's awesome. You're gonna be very proud of yourself, which you should be, but just beware, a few years from now, you're gonna be so much better. You're gonna be incredible that it's gonna look like a trash bag. So maybe keep it. It's very cool to see that in the future. Anyways, definitely start off with something easy, like a t-shirt. I will have some free patterns down below if you guys want to try that out for your first pattern to sew. A lot of the times back in the, I want to say back in the day when I was in high school, I'm not that old, but in high school I didn't have, or I didn't know about patterns you can just download online, print at home, and then sew. I had to go to the store and actually like filter through that huge cabinet at the fabric store and then get that paper, thin tissue paper, and then cut that out and sew stuff like that. Different world we live in, where now there are free patterns online. You can use it at your home printer, cut it out. There's video tutorials. Like, it's incredible the resources online you can get for just sewing. So I will have some resources for you guys down below for creating your first garment. But honestly, don't spend money on it. Just, there's some really good free patterns out there for your first one. As for the fabric, okay. If you want to go out and get fancy fabric from the fabric store, that is okay. But you could also go to the thrift store and get like a duvet cover or a not a blanket, like a sheet, like a bed sheet. It's cheap. You can get bed sheets for a few dollars at the thrift store. They are cotton woven. You can make not a t-shirt, boxer shorts out of them, okay? That is great. Instead of spending like $30 on fabric at the actual fabric store, like, yeah, you probably get a nicer pattern or whatever, but you could probably get some pretty sick vintage sheets at the thrift store and make some killer shorts. Just saying, for a few dollars. And you're probably, you know, this is just gonna be something you keep, so I would hate for you to spend a lot of money on something and then never wear it or use it. Like, I feel like that's always the worst feeling, is like when you spend a lot of money on supplies and then you're like, ooh, this is pretty bad. You've probably experienced that before. I definitely have lots of times. And lastly, step number 5. Jack wants to hear step number 5. Redo it. Like, redo the thing you just made. Remake it. Just do it all over again. Because I guarantee you, the second time you do this, it will come out 10 times better. Because the first time you do something, when you're doing a new pattern, you're gonna mess up. There's gonna be like things, you're just not gonna understand it. But then the second time around, after learning through the first process, you're probably seam ripping a lot. Like, it's not gonna look great just because of, you know, how you did it. But the second time around, now you know actually how to make it, and now you know where you can just put things together, how to sew it, okay, do this, how it fits, everything. Second time around, 10 times better. And I just feel like it will just leave a better taste in your mouth. Not so dirty, you know? It's not like you lick the sidewalk. It's like, hey, I can taste a little bit of mint in here. Refreshing. Very refreshing when you actually do something and it comes out good. But I feel like after you've done all those steps where you actually sewed something for the first time, then you can kind of reevaluate everything. If you even like this, if you want to make more, step it up a bit. Just because it's, as you go through these 5 steps, you're gonna see it's not that easy, but it's not impossible, okay? It's not impossible. That's why they teach it to grade 8s, to 12 and 13-year-olds. 12 and 13? If a 12-year-old boy can do it, you can do it too. 12-year-old girl, all of the above, they can do it, you can do it. It's just a lot of work, and that's okay. It's only 5 steps. I feel like if you know, think about it, it's only 5 steps to actually creating something that you actually will decently like. That's not that many, right? So I hope this kind of helped you. I will have a little guide down below with more details of everything you need. I didn't really feel like I needed to explain, you know, say get scissors, get thread, get a seam ripper, get this. Like everything that I have in this guide, just get it all. Like I'm just saying bare minimum things to do. So these are kind of minimum things you do. I will include a couple extra bonuses if you're very bougie and you've done this before and you're like, I kind of want to invest a little bit more into sewing because I really enjoy it. Then you be bougie. You go all out, girl. Friend. I'm going to turn the camera off now, so I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys soon because this was a kind of little bonus video I did, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah. Jicky, I gotta get up. I gotta get up. Say bye. Bye.